So I'm curious about your story and your care for your loved one, Kathleen. How did you decide that Marama was the best place for her?
Well, Heather, you may remember that, first of all, I encountered Dr. Bredesen in October of 2014. It's been 13 years that I've been researching and helping Kathleen. And we set up a Google Drive of research. And when Dr. Bredesen's paper was published in September of 2014, I think I read it October 6th. And we just jumped up and down because from that original paper, Kathleen's and my research, we had her on every supplement. We did an Excel spreadsheet of his original 10, except Bacopa Monieri and Vita PQQ. And then by the time we met him at the Buck in May of 2015, he had added PS 100, phosphatidylserine, and turkey tail, which we had, which he, obviously his research was far greater than ours, but just Kathleen and I, the little engines that could, in a world where Alzheimer's was completely incurable and people thought we were insane, really. I think you're aware that I'm an actor and I had a studio coaching actors. And at the time I was so fascinated by what happens in the brain, with the brilliant performance, right? Like someone like Mark Rylance or Meryl Streep, when they use their senses, their imagination, their passion, their intellect, their body, what happens to their brain? And sure enough, myelin wraps around the nerves every time anyone approaches anything with passion. So when Kathleen learned through a lumbar puncture that there was a 90% chance that she was going to have Alzheimer's, I was like, Kathleen, we're going to strengthen your brain, the parts of it that are healthy, while we look for a cure. And, part of her story is that with that initial diagnosis, which she heard over the phone, and I saw her right afterwards, and she was as white as a sheet, she became an alcoholic. She thought, I'd rather drink myself to death than die of Alzheimer's. And so it was this kind of balance of trying to give her hope, which is what I think Marama offers, Heather, Dr. Sanderson. That is what you offer, a world where recovery is probable. Like, look at your study, not even possible, but probable, particularly if you catch it early. If Marama had existed in 2014, in my opinion, Kathleen would be symptom-free today, right? But with Dr. Bredesen's 6 types, Kathleen has all 6. So, and as you know, this is such a dynamic field, changing every moment. And I feel like being at Marama, we're at the heartbeat in California. Here in New York, we had to have our brilliant mail clerk mail things from New Jersey because New York has very protective laws, I think, for the AMA, and a lot of the testing, which Dr. Bredesen uses, or some of it, isn't even available in the state of New York. You have to I would have it shipped to my friend, a cinematographer in Connecticut, or, so anyhow, so in California, this is really where a lot of this is being uncovered. And so you don't have to spend time persuading people that how you live your life, what you eat, your level of stress affects your cognitive health, right? Like, anyhow. So Kathleen and I, so one by one, I think the first supplement that she tried was ashwagandha. And I counted to make certain she was taking it every day. So she was kind of going out of her alcoholism and hopelessness into the possibility that there was a different kind of future. And as I'm sure you're aware, Kathleen has been a major philanthropist. And through this journey, she basically decided that this was going to be her contribution. She wants to contribute to the solution for cognitive decline worldwide, which we happen to label Alzheimer's. In fact, here in New York, the staff of anywhere from 8 to 10 who worked with Kathleen, we called ourselves witnesses to her well-being. And our mantra was, we're basically saving the planet. Because when you look at the number of people who have Alzheimer's, who will get Alzheimer's, or even the people who will care for them, it's going to bankrupt our health system and internationally. I remember the last time I had the honor of hearing Dr. Bredesen speak, I think it was in 2019 at NYU. Somebody asked him about caregivers, and he said he saw a future with no caregivers, right? Where really, like, Alzheimer's is solvable. You get your cognoscopy, you determine as early as possible the underlying triggers, you treat it, and you have your brain for your health span, your lifespan. So, but anyhow, so, this has been like such an amazing journey with my friend Kathleen. So I had done 2 of what were Dr. Bredesen's physicians trainings. And I think the first one at the Buck was 2015, and then 16, also health coaches. I think you did 2017. So we were very much in this world. When I saw on Facebook, I didn't know you from Adam, that you had bought your first home and your vision for Marama. So, and somehow I got your cell phone number and called you and spoke to you about Kathleen. Now this was years into her progress and decline as we uncovered, leaf by leaf. And Kathleen was more advanced than what you were looking for. I don't remember what your cutoff score was, but I think it was maybe a MOCA score of 16. And in fact, you had bought Marama as a facility that had hospice patients. And you had, I think, of 14 beds, 7 were already full. So you said to me, Kimberly, I would love to welcome Kathleen. And if I had 100 beds, I would. But I really want to show the basic efficacy of the Bredesen protocol. So it's important for me to have mild cognitive impairment, or, to not be as advanced as Kathleen was. So I remember after our phone conversation, every day I'd get up and I'd say, please, God, give Heather Sanderson 100 beds. So that was my vision. And so our conversation, I think, was November of 19. Marama opened in February. Here comes COVID. Really, like, you guys had a waiting list in Europe. People couldn't get here. So I watched, and I saw in the fall of 2020 that you were still advertising for empty spaces. So I picked up the phone and spoke with the executive director at that time, and she was like, no. And then she said, well, we are interested in what you're doing, so let's keep in touch. And so then calling back, she said, well, put together an application. And this is the application we put together to work for Dr. Bredesen, right? Like with Kathleen, the Beatles. So I put together an application and gave it to her. And you all accepted Kathleen, and we went with, there were 2 other witnesses who went with me, and we quarantined, I think, for 16 days and in La Jolla. And my friend Jay says we should write a play because it was so much fun. It was so much fun because we were, where's the nutritional guide? We were doing her food, and her protocol, which, sorry, I'm getting kind of all over the place, but so what I think Marama has to offer so Kathleen is unique. We did, I think, 3 of Dr. Bredesen's immersives, and there are people showing up there who are like, what do you mean I have to give up sugar? Kathleen had already, in fact, it was an issue with Dr. Bredesen and his lovely wife, Aida, when we came with Kathleen's supplement lists. If we read that something helped, we put her on it. And I kind of did it as well, like a King's taster, to make certain it wasn't going to kill her, right? And then it was kind of hard getting her off of everything, because as you know, while there are all of these potential solutions, it's a match to your genetics, using the epigenetics to your genetics, and also where you are currently in those various stressors. So if we heard it was good for Alzheimer's, Kathleen was on. So anyhow, it's been a whole process of taking her off what she doesn't need, anyhow. What am I trying to say here? So, but back to Marama. So, luckily, this took over our lives here, right? As you can imagine.
It
And
has a way of doing that, this
well,
disease.
and also it's interesting because I so love my time at Marama. Like each person that I've gotten to know there has such a profound story. That they're really such amazing people. And Kathleen's been a world traveler, and I feel like she feels that she's on, like a Harvard trip to, Bali, or, what I mean? Like she has all of these really fascinating people around her. So each time I've gone out to, I mean, I could do it full time, but for the fact that I have another life, right? But what I think is so wonderful about Marama is the immersive experience for someone to whom this is brand new. Because, and I have to say, I have such tremendous respect for Dr. Bredesen and for you and this whole community, because it's not like you're dealing, with just any disease. This is a person's cognition, which impairs their ability to execute a very complex, detailed, personalized program. And so the fact that Marama is this immersive, calm, tranquil, beautiful, Southern California, San Diego. I grew up in Alexandria, Egypt, and San Diego has the weather closest to Alex, in America. My dad always loved, I mean, it's beautiful. You look out every window and there's a sunset, or, your own organic garden where people can plant, and work. So you have this heaven, really. It really is a piece of heaven where a client, a person can get this in their bones. They can eat Gill and Rose's delicious food. A big piece of this, as you know, is getting in and staying in ketosis, which is hard, because even in Kathleen's home, people had to eat while they were here. And to keep that where it's not tempting to her. There is no temptation at Marama other than the delicious. Each time I go, and I'm so privileged to share in what they eat, I come back rejuvenated, and I really am a mindful eater. But the food is so healthy and delicious and wonderful. But so you have somebody who is starting, like how I wish you would have existed when Kathleen got her initial information that this was coming. She's got one April before, but it was actually the lumbar puncture that let her know that there was a 90% chance that within 10 years she'd be institutionalized with Alzheimer's. Because a client comes, they have interesting activities, brain engagement, friendships, music, delicious food, the biomap, the red light therapy, the oxygen bite, because and this is interesting to me because while I love and adore Dr. Bredesen, you're a naturopathic doctor and you bring your whole history. You also, after you did the Bredesen training, you were skeptical until you saw that it worked. And so, obviously Dr. Bredesen has added sauna and all these other things, but you have solutions outside of the lab. I love that Dr. Bredesen is so quantitative, and we dug up all of Kathleen's medical history. She's 81. And all of that is built into her RECODE program, right? And her blood labs, which you can't fake, right. And the MRIs, and working with Cyrus and the NeuroQuant, right? Like, but so a person, brand new discovers that they carry the gene, they're forgetting, they're maybe doing pre-code or recode. They can go to Marama for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year with a spouse or solo. And you know what? I speak to Kathleen or I speak to somebody at Marama frequently. And you have given me the privilege of having the Nest camera in her room where I can, my voice must be like the voice of God to her, right? I can turn on her music with her Alexa. Mm-hmm. So I feel connected to her. She's connected to me. I'm able to, we had to put her cat to sleep. She was able to go kind of be present through that journey, even though I'm in New York City. So anyhow, I'm going on and on. But I think that what Marama offers is it takes a very complex solution that isn't yet in our, it's not reimbursed now by insurance. And you have, because I kept thinking, I wish there were other people in Kathleen's building because we're doing all this work for one person. And then also, what I find is that Kathleen has at Marama is peer relationships, which is very different than me, who is I'm 17 years younger than she is, and she's been my friend since August of 91, kind of my mom in New York, my Auntie Mame, she's brilliant and fun. But, on some level, the other people were there to take care of her. And so what I have really enjoyed is watching Kathleen have friendships with the various people who've come and gone at Marama. So,
it's interesting. You referenced our conversation in November of 2019 when I shared that I was nervous about having someone as progressed through the decline of Alzheimer's as Kathleen, because I didn't have, back then I had even less confidence that we could help everyone. And the other big concern that I had was that people around her would say, they would be depressed by this idea that, oh, I'm going in that direction. And I want to just share with you and anyone who listens to this, it was exactly the opposite. And I can't explain if it's human nature or if it's just Kathleen's soul that shows up, but everyone rallies around her. They cheer her successes. They cheer her on through anything that she's doing throughout the day. They connect with her, and she is an inspiration. She adds so much value just being herself and being there. She gives other people who show up at Marama as residents, yes, a peer, but someone to cheer on and someone to comfort, someone to care for, so that they're not just being cared for, they have purpose and meaning through connecting with her. And I have been so inspired by seeing that happen. And again, I couldn't tell you if it's just Kathleen and who the light that she is that attracts people, or if maybe that's we would see a similar phenomenon with other individuals.
Yeah, yeah. I agree that she is luminous, right? She has a really big heart. She's incredibly generous and loving and joyful. And I think I've seen so many people connect to her that I do think it's also a dynamic, because, and by dynamic, I mean that okay. Sorry, I'm gonna get choked up. As a culture, we are losing out by not seeing the value and humanity in our people, our loved ones, everyone who lives long lives. We are missing out. And I think that when you are present with Kathleen and you see that she is completely there on the other side of her impairments, right? And that, not trying to fix her, just absolutely meeting her where she is. And, I think that when someone else has that experience, it gives them hope, right? Just like for all of us, really, the only thing that any of us can do is show up and be present now, today. And I think that, and it's so interesting because when she was in New York working here, I had actors working, pre-med students, people got into medical school off the references, of everything that they did because we're at the cutting edge. But with the actors, we would walk to Turtle Pond and Molly would be on the phone with her agent, trying to, and then Kathleen would just be fine naming, and and really we're all trying to get to where Kathleen is, which is completely present. And anyhow, I think that I just think community is what we need with Alzheimer's, not, not isolation. And really, like, the neurons that fire when somebody reaches in and connects with her, it's mutual, right? And so I think both brains grow and repair when that connection is made. So, but I also have to say, and this may be unique to Kathleen, I've been so impressed, first of all, with the staff at Marama, right? Like, I'm so impressed with everybody that you have found and the people that are around Kathleen, helping Kathleen. Or Anne, not but, she's had several comorbidities, right? Like injuries. She has a seizure disorder, and the way Marama has been in contact with me every day on her vitals, if something is where she is seeming not okay, like, I'm so impressed by how Marama has managed her excellent care through various things that have nothing to do with Alzheimer's. And so I would say that for me, being here, a 6-hour flight away, and having a 24/7 emergency relationship with Kathleen, I feel at peace that within, like, she choked on chicken and Dana gave her the Heimlich, right? Like, just the things, everyone is so on top of it. Lexi, Garrett, Monica, Dana, I can't even name all of them, but the staff is phenomenal. And yeah, I feel like, okay, so Kathleen is a unique case. I think that the majority of people who come to Marama, just looking at your study, during COVID, people reversed. The 23 who participated, right? During COVID, this program works. So, somebody can look at the cost of it and think, oh my God, that's too much for me on my long-term care insurance. And the real expense, Heather, is if it progresses and somebody needs 24/7 care. If somebody early in the disease can identify that they, have mild cognitive impairment or subjective cognitive impairment, they are interested in Bredesen and this reversal process, but they don't really know how to do it. Those are the people for whom I think what you have to offer is ideal. And I think in 5 years, you've opened up the Kansas. In 5 years, I hope there's Maramas in every state, numerous ones, because I love that you're setting it up like an AA recovery center where somebody comes, learns what kind of Alzheimer's do I have, what's triggering it, how can I reverse my toxic load, what do I need to do every day to keep my brain healthy? And as you have noticed, people who go off the protocol, like when they go off to visit family and whatnot, that they deteriorate. And so it really is it's about almost like a military training, right? Like they come to Marama, they learn how to do it. What are the supplements they need? How do they take them? What is the exercise? And then what would that look like when they return home?
I like that, a boot camp for your brain.
And I remember Dr. Bredesen when he attended your opening, he said he looked forward to seeing the first client improve and go home. And you've had numerous people who've come with a given MoCA score or MRI hippocampal volume and leave with improved numbers. you know, and I don't know if, you know, what your program is, keeping in touch with people after they go home, but you do have Marama at home. But yeah, so yeah, and you know, yeah, I just am, I'm so grateful to you. I'm just so, so grateful. I'm
We're
so,
so
and I have to say, I've been really moved by how together we've managed everything, right? Like, you know, I think and you know, I'm I feel like Kathleen is in the absolute best hands, and that she is improving, right? Like that, you know, what her, it's interesting because in the time that she's been at Marama, we've lost so many people that, or in the time, the last 10 years that she's been doing this, we just celebrated the anniversary of the passing of one of her best friends. So some of the people who've been concerned about Kathleen are no longer on earth. And, you know, yeah. I don't know if you have any questions.
well, Kathleen is such a gift, and we're so grateful for the partnership with you. I am curious, like, if you can make Marama better in some way, if you could give us feedback that we could implement, and it would make the experience even better for Kathleen or other families interested in getting the benefits of the Bredesen protocol through an immersive experience, what advice would you give?
Well, I feel like we are working on this piece, which is, you know, the way I came to it was what happens to the brain with cognitive engagement, right? Like literally growing the brain, the neuroplasticity by, in the actor world, it's a Meisner exercise. It's where, like, when the witnesses were with Kathleen, I asked them to be mindful of Sanford Meisner, was a very famous acting teacher who had this repetition exercise. And so I would say, you have on a blue shirt. And then I would wait for you to repeat it to me. And so it's not even so much about the content, but about the connection, the relationship. And so it's easy as a caregiver to like talk at the person, right? As opposed to really trusting that there is a response there, even if her words are inhibited. So when I working with the witnesses here, I asked them, we had rules like, if it was Kathleen and me in the room, I pinch and ouch. So I would pinch and I'd wait for an ouch from her, as opposed to, you know, galloping over her, because I have, my language capacity is more sophisticated. And then if there were 3 of us in the room, we included her. And then of course I found this at doctor's appointments where the doctor just wanted to talk to me, and I would be Kathleen, you know, always bringing it back to her. And then another thing I learned, and actually I should put together things that I've learned that I wish I would have known at the beginning, which is, we had an occupational therapist in training work as a witness here. And that's where I learned that I need to tolerate my own internal frustration as she struggles. And instead of being, you know, I'm a helpful, my parents are from Oklahoma, nice woman. So I'd be like, oh, look, Kathleen, let me. And as you do that, I'm robbing her of her capacity to brush her teeth, or, you know. And so to really stress that that what she's doing is her hero's journey, right? That struggle is her hero's journey. And I have the privilege of witnessing it. And if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So
And the responsibility to empower.
Yeah. And also we used to call it keeping the feather in the air, to make this world so thrilling, she wanted to join it. Right. So our, you know, and it's interesting because one of our wonderful, wonderful Michael Reyes, he worked at Columbia by day and he was headed to medical school, but we had such creative workers here. He ended up applying to get his MFA in creative writing at Brooklyn because he was so inspired. He was like, I don't want to do medicine. I want to do this creative world. But, you know, I think so the work that we've been doing with Jessica, the cognitive engager, Annette Daniel, who she has this thing called attentioning, where you approach the person with no desire to fix and to really be present and physical touch. And then also, obviously, Tipa Snow, we love. And then also, I've been exploring, and I don't know if I've talked to you about it, but Montessori for people with dementia, which, you know, Marama across the board is already practicing complete and utter respect for each person there. And also the whole Montessori idea of not going in to help or complete the task for a child, very much what I was saying with the occupational therapist, where you allow the struggle, I mean, haven't we all struggled as we've uncovered these solutions, right? Like, so,
and so much of the celebration is about getting up over the struggle, right? If there is no struggle, there's not much to celebrate, right? It's when you put in the effort that makes it so satisfying when you complete the task, and somebody just comes in and does it for you, you lose that sense of self-worth over time.
right.
And engaging and creating that value and that worth and that sense of accomplishment is so crucial to any human experience.
Right. And, you know, I want to, there are all kinds of theater connections near Marama that I want to get out there and get going. And then also, the music therapist through NeuroLab 360, because as you know, music is so phenomenal. So I would say that the cognitive engagement piece is a growing edge. It's definitely already there. And also everyone's at a different, you know, what Kathleen needs is very different than, you know, somebody with subjective cognitive impairment. However, it is interesting how, you know, I loved when I was there and the tuba player was playing and taking requests. You know, it's just such a dynamic place. And I actually think, Heather, you know, you are touched in terms of, I so admire whenever I'm in, you know, talking about this experience, how aligned you are.
Thank you.
How aligned you are with your North Star. Because, you know, I have seen all kinds of things happen when you manage a facility. And even in our very first conversation, I remember saying, well, Heather, have you checked out X? You know, mentioning I'd done all the research of any facility that was doing any kind of Bredesen. And you were like, I have no. And I can just get this sense of like, nothing gets you off your beam, right? Where I tend to like engage with the detractors, I really so appreciate that this is your mission, that this is what you're doing. And, you know, you're going in, like you are truly going in where people have not been before, and then discovering the issues as you go with grace and integrity and honesty. And, you know, I can tell you that any family can really feel safe in your hands, right? Like you're completely open. And, you know, like we're in it together, figuring out what the latest complication is in this journey where Kathleen isn't always able to tell us exactly what's going on.
Yeah,
and at the same time, we're identifying new things like the glyphosate, whatever, that we just hadn't tested before, right? So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, there's peaks and valleys in everyone's experience, right? There are, at Marama, we opened the week before COVID hit. We've faced atmospheric rivers. We've faced huge changes in the labor market, right? And the people who have worked with us through kind of the post-COVID era and adjusting to all of that. We've had to navigate people on the entire spectrum of cognitive decline. We've had perfectly cognitively functional spouses who've come and lived at Marama. And then we've had people with MoCA scores of 0 where they can't even articulate anymore.
Mhm.
And Kathleen, we've been through, so we've had the peaks and valleys at Marama itself, and we've had the peaks and valleys of the health issues that come up for our residents, right? The unavoidable falls, Kathleen had a pressure wound on her foot after rubbing it unintentionally and then during the night when she was sleeping that set her back significantly. We've had residents get COVID. And in addition to the peaks and valleys at Marama and the peaks and valleys for each resident experience, we have the life that their loved ones live outside of Marama that plays a role in how each of us kind of show up in this team there to support the individual who ultimately we're all responsible for.
Right.
And optimizing that experience, it's a dance, it's a collaboration, it's a dance, it's a partnership, and there needs to be a lot of trust. And I'm curious if you were giving advice to someone else considering having their loved one at Marama, what advice would you give when it comes to communicating with us and checking in and navigating these peaks and valleys of life for you and your loved one?
Gosh, you know, what would I say? Gosh, um, I'm, I, I, I like having frequent contact with Kathleen, right? So, which we've done through her iPad and through the Alexa. It's actually a screen where my face can come on the Alexa and then the Nest cameras. So, um, I don't know, I, I communicate with the staff frequently. And I mean, I don't, if I am a burden on them in any way, they, don't let me know that at all. And I would like to come and visit even more frequently than I do. So I don't know what advice, you know, I love the idea of a spouse coming with the person, with the client, so that, or in, my case, Kathleen and I are just friends, but I'm the one that, I'm her power of attorney and medical proxy. So I'm the one that she empowered to kind of meet, to fulfill what she wants. But I think to have somebody there where they can actually see what the protocol is.
Mhm.
In terms of a loved one communicating, I don't know that I have anything other than kind of what happens organically.
Yeah, it sounds like the way that you've navigated that is through like technology, really leveraging the technology. So there's
Yes.
a camera, there's a Nest Cam that you have there so you can see her anytime. There's also sort of a portal or a way for her to jump online, or those care partners, the witnesses, the
Right.
caregivers that we have at Marama to um, beam you in via
Right.
technology so that Kathleen can see your face and can hear your voice.
Uh-huh.
And then you also used, I think, text messaging and phone calls so that there's quick kind of day-to-day interaction with the people who are present with Kathleen.
Yes.
And that knowledge of just like being kept in the loop day to day is helpful.
Yeah.
And
And
then, oh yeah,
the
go ahead.
each one who interacts with Kathleen sends me videos, photos. Monica now sends a weekly summary. So I'm able to actually like look back historically 60 days on my Nest camera and check, how much Kathleen's awake at night, in other words, yeah, I feel she has her own iPad. So, I can interact with her on the iPad when she's out of her room. So I feel like, yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I spend a lot of time with Kathleen, even though I'm in New York,
Mhm.
so, and she's in California. So yeah.
It's kind of amazing. I mean, just in these conversations with families, We have to have that level of trust that your loved one is going to be really well taken care of so that you can be freed up to live your life, right? That's
Yes.
a big part of this because it is a full-time job. At Marama, we have 14 full-time staff right now, and they facilitate all of the exercises and the diet and the activities and the supplements and making sure everyone's safe 24 hours a day. And no one can do that on their own. And sometimes even facilitating that at home with caregivers coming in and out, that can be so burdensome. It's just too much. And so creating that safety, that feeling that really that's one of our primary goals is that the loved ones who are free to go live their lives, raise their kids, focus on their careers, that they have that assurance that their loved one at Marama is getting the best possible care of anywhere else, that they are safe and loved and cared for and engaged and really like living this phase of life, the best possible version of it.
And
And
also improving,
yes.
right? Like this is the thing with the eye toward coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, that is, most people think you're crazy. There is no, I don't think there's another Alzheimer's treatment center when Marama opened that had that as the baseline goal. And you've succeeded in how many people have come, been there, improved and gone home.
Yeah, it's been really phenomenal. So our second iteration of this, where we went to Kansas and a sister facility, a Clear Mind Center there. And the question when we did that was, can we do this twice? Is it possible to make this happen in multiple locations? Is there something special about San Diego or something special about having me or Carrie there? And the answer is no. We've had our first residents in Kansas. We have 5 of them who have been there for 6 months or more, and we've gotten the data. And 4 of the 5 had measurable improvements on their MoCA scores after 6 months. And so we can do this over and over in every city across the country and hopefully around the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think of homocysteine as being one of the first things Dr. Bredesen talked about. And when I brought that to doctors here in New York, they're like, homocysteine? No, what would you want that? You'd have to we're willing to self-pay. And, we literally, I remember when we first did homocysteine for Kathleen, I don't know, it was like 13 point something. And we just implemented the program. And within 9 weeks, it was down to 5.6, which, when you're at Marama, you have hope. You're no longer in a world of skeptics, right? Like that's so huge. My wonderful friend, Katie, cousin Katie, who eventually you'll get to meet her. She's a major capital fundraiser, brilliant. And she was saying when I first started doing this with Kathleen, she actually lived in Wichita. And I called her up. She'd been wanting to move to New York. And I was like, Katie, if there's ever a time you want to live rent-free in New York, I need family. And so she came and lived in Kathleen's guest room. And as we were doing all this for maybe she was here for 5 months till she got a job with the Girl Scouts. But and when I was adding the protocol and I said, I don't know if it'll work. And she said, well, even if it's placebo, Kim, that's something that's measurable. So, we know it's not just placebo, right?
Yeah,
MRI.
when we see people, right, the imaging, but also when we see people come off of the program, we tend to see them decline. And so it's a lifestyle. It's adopting a brain healthy lifestyle and sticking to it as much as possible. And people don't have to do 100% of it. You can get better doing pieces of it, but our confidence is highest when you dive in fully. And as you mentioned, when you start early in the process of decline, because we have to remember that when you start noticing symptoms subjectively, and then especially when you start measuring things objectively, that disease process has been present in the brain sometimes for decades. And so really prevention is key to stop the neurodegeneration from happening at all and catching these things. It's such a luxury, right? If you're approaching this conversation in 2024 and not 2013, like when you and Kathleen started, when there was really almost no information and no research pointing at hope. And now there's a lot. There's always more to be done, but there is so much more hope here 10 years later, because we've had a chance to do some of the research, collect more data. Dr. Bredesen has trained more doctors and more health coaches and more people to get patients who aren't quite as resourceful as you and Kathleen to get
Or
access
it's
to this.
complicated. You know, Kathleen
Yeah, it's very complicated.
had all 6 triggers, plus
Right.
she had become an alcoholic through the journey of learning it was coming, which, you know,
Mm.
I had a very important thought so the majority, really 85% of this is volitional. You know, it's actually doable. It's diet, exercise. You know, after you do the initial Apollo recode testing, identifying what you have and how to treat it, right? So the majority of it is just lifestyle change. And what Marama does, in my opinion, it's like, this is the milieu. This is the divine milieu of cognitive health. Now, come, get better, really believe in these choices so that when you go out, I love the story of Julie G's husband, who's the pilot. You know, like, it's so hard to find good food in airports.
Mhm.
And he brings his little ice pack with avocados and, you know, and his brain is healthier. And other pilots see him do it and become healthier. So I feel like the protective immersion of Marama, you know, had we had that for Kathleen in 2011, is really when, you know, she began her early testing. And it makes me so happy that it's available to her family members who carry, right? This has a genetic piece to it, not that it's all genetic, right? But basically to be able to go into this safe space where other people are figuring it out, other people are implementing it. You're just eating the delicious food, seeing what life is like, stress-free, with relationships, in a sunny world, and then you get better so that you have the cognitive ability to really implement it when you go home with your spouse, if your spouse is lucky enough to join you, or your children, or with their support, you know, whenever you do go back to your own world. So, you know, but for me, it is the hope. And also, you know, you're at the heartbeat of the research. Don't you love Ram Rao?
Oh, yes,
Such a
one of my
brilliant man.
favorite people.
Uh-huh. And, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah, Dr. Bredesen, right? Like this, I mean, really, the whole world is on fire. The really, I think of it as the world of neuroplasticity and healing. The body wants to heal.
It's designed to heal. It is divinely designed to heal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Kimberly, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful to Kathleen. It's just such a privilege to know you both and to witness Kathleen's journey, your journey as her care partner and witness. And I just couldn't be more grateful. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. You are truly my heroine.